It's not often, but every once in a while I see something in Excel and I'm just blown away by it, and I had to share this with you. This is Tine's trick to replace an incredibly long slicer with a single cell. All right, so I was watching a demo from Zebra BI, and Tine, who's their tech guy, was showing me a demo of a dashboard that he created. I'm like, wait, what is that? Now, his dashboard was beautiful. I just have a stupid little dashboard here, but he had this one cell right here in L3 that allowed you to go in and choose someone. Like, you could search. And I'm like, what is this? What are you doing? Oh my God. This is so awesome. All right, so here's a pivot table, right? And next to this pivot table, I've inserted a slicer with sales rep. And there's so many sales reps, there's no way to get this thing. You know, I made it 6 columns and it still has this huge scroll bar. Tine has managed to replace this huge slicer with a single cell. Watch this. First off, you have your pivot table, and that pivot table is tied to the slicer. So now we're going to make sure that the next pivot table is tied to the slicer. So I copy the entire pivot table, come out here to the right-hand side, and paste, right? So now that's to make sure that this second pivot table is using the same slicer as the first pivot table. In this second pivot table, I'm going to take the slicer field and move it to the filters, and then I'm going to remove every other field from the pivot table. And so what we end up with is this tiny little 2-cell pivot table. I'm going to open the drop down and select multiple items. Click OK. And, oh, geez, I should have done this one first. Right click, pivot table options, uncheck, auto fit column width on update. Now I can make it wider, all right? And then what we can do, copy the entire pivot table, all 2 cells of it, come back here and paste, right? And then Tine hides column K. All right, so now we're left with just this one single cell with a drop down that has a search box that allows us to filter the dashboard. And of course, when we choose an item from this list, that automatically changes the slicer, which is hidden back here. So you see Adam Ball, right? And the pivot table, the dashboard, of course, is using formulas to pull from this pivot table. I thought that was very, very clever. I went back to Tine and said, hey, this is so cool. I want to show it on my channel. He's like, sure, show it on my channel. So shout out to Tine from Zebra BI. What a cool trick this is, especially if your slicer is just out of control with too many items. Well, hey, I want to thank Tine for that awesome trick, and I want to thank you for stopping by. We'll see you next time for another netcast from Mr. Excel.